I call the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and firstly to acknowledge the member who's just sat down. We enjoyed his opening maiden speech, and it's good to see him participating in this debate as a student loan holder. I had one too, but in the bad old days when you had to get from a bank rather than the government, and yes, it did look discouraging for a pretty good while. Mr Chairman, Labour supports this bill, and I might say I still don't understand why the Greens don't, because much of it is extending the coverage of the student loan provisions, and that's got to be a good thing. And we in particular support the extension to students studying in the realm of New Zealand countries or living in the realm of New Zealand countries, because they do deserve the same constitutional privileges in this regard as people within the standard New Zealand territorial boundary. But I want Sir to begin by taking a step back and positioning this bill within the general ethos of how the Labour Party approaches the question of tertiary study. And it's fundamental to us, and will always, I believe, be fundamental to us, from the proposition that all citizens have the same, if you like, ethical value, moral worth, that they all deserve the same opportunities to thrive and to make the very best for themselves in life. That is why we're for the many, not the few, if you like, because we think that if opportunities are spread equally, we not only improve the welfare of our community and strengthen our economy, because equal societies perform better economically, but we provide social mobility. We provide the opportunity that the son or daughter of, and I used to study in Wales, of a miner could aspire to all the same opportunities as the son or daughter of a doctor. And that is something that many members in this House have benefited from, and even some members opposite who make a big deal about growing up in a state house or needing the state education system. What angers us sometimes is if we believe that members opposite might be in some way pulling up the ladder after themselves. Those kids who went to the state school or benefited from the state house have an extra obligation to make sure that today's generation gets the same opportunity that they had. And so that's why, sir, we are always a little suspicious when, I have to say, there's some ambiguity, not so much in this bill, but in statements that various ministers and members opposite have made. The Prime Minister, for example, said that he wants to take a careful look at the policy settings around student support. Well, you wonder what that actually means, because the policy's pretty clear that you get an interest-free student loan and you have approximately 75% of the costs of your tertiary study in New Zealand covered by the state, so that we don't create worse barriers for all New Zealand young people to get access to education. And as finance spokesperson, I'm well aware that could not be more important than during a recession, because we have large numbers of young people unemployed. Over 45,000 15 to 19-year-olds. That's 12,000 more than the same time a year ago. And that number increases to over 72,000 young New Zealanders if you include the 20 to 24 age group. And as my colleague and friend Kamal Sepuloni has noted, it's Māori and Pacifica students, and I'd add also many students from migrant backgrounds, who are overrepresented in those statistics, because in a recession, it's kind of last on, first off. Last on, first off. And in my electorate of New Lynn that I'm passionate about, there are 13.5% of my constituents who are Pacifica, 9% who are Māori, and wait for it, 23% who are of Asian origin, many of them brand new. And by the way, the average income of the Asian population in my electorate is lower than either the Pacifica or the Māori, because they were the most recent arrivals struggling to make their way in the job market. Now, it's absolutely essential, if we are to walk the talk about being a proud, independent, egalitarian country that stands up for decency, fairness in the Kiwi way, that we have an education system that is open to all. And members opposite often talk about freedom. Well, freedom is not just the absence of regulation, folks. Freedom and personal responsibility can only be real if you are free to do something because you are empowered and resourced to do it. And there's an old philosophical debate about the question, am I free to dine at the Ritz? Well, there's no law against it, but guys, if you can't pay the bill, you can't eat there. Mr. Chairman, you're only free to dine at the Ritz. You're only free to get a tertiary education. Not you, sir, I'm sure you had a fine education. One is only free to get a tertiary education if one can get a student loan to meet the costs of attendance, and if one is not charged exorbitant fees for the privilege of doing so. So Labour is now, will tomorrow, will always, sir, be 100% supportive of a strong tertiary education system with universal access to it. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend a couple of things in this bill. I've mentioned the extraterritorial application extension. I also want to echo my Green colleague in saying that as a former Associate Minister of Revenue, I support the idea of moving the formula into the primary legislation and not leaving it in regulations. The formula is A, too important, and B, I think it really settles an argument about whether the regulation should be amended and takes pressure off the Minister when it is Parliament's voice that has set that, and I think that reflects the importance that Parliament should accord to a good student loan scheme. So, as I've said, the irony here, the inbuilt irony, I don't want to be unfair to members opposite, but we keep getting mixed signals from the national members about whether their heart's really in it around student loans. Stephen Joyce admitting it was only a political call to endorse this in 2008. Well, it does seem, Mr. Speaker, that for that minister, Mr. Joyce, everything is only a political call. What is it that he would support if the focus groups told him not to? What is it that is so sacrosanct that it is beyond polling for Mr. Joyce? I don't know what it is, and he's been in this House for 15 months, and by the way, if you're listening, Mr. Joyce, a single millimetre of broadband in the ground would be a really good idea, because there was about $300 million worth ready to go 15 months ago when you cancelled the Broadband Investment Fund. So that, of course, is very important to students, Mr. Speaker, because they're high users of broadband. So I just wanted to slip that in there, as they say, surgically insert that broadband point, and it would be a diversion to go on about the parlous state of the telecommunications industry at the moment. So I will stop there, Mr. Speaker, but I'm sure Mr. Joyce is having a very busy day, apparently not as busy as the Prime Minister, however, who will be, of course, very concerned about the conduct of the House and the shambolic nature of the government's business. And what an interesting week it has been for the government, hasn't it? What an interesting week. They throw the House into urgency for such matters of colossal importance as this bill, worthy though it is, supporting it as we are. Why are we doing this in urgency in the dead of the morning? Why are we doing this in urgency? Why couldn't this be just accorded a normal legislative process? Is the government's management of the House so terrible that they have, yes, I believe it is, I think we've seen that demonstrated. If I can, sir, take the opportunity of commending our whips, and Mr. Hipkins, who's been supporting them, Mr. Mallard, Mr. Hughes. I think we've seen a pretty good example of the constructive use by the opposition of House procedure to assist the smooth functioning of the House. And of course we're very grateful to sir for your role and that of the other assistant speakers and the role of the office of the clerk in assisting the government to get through its morning, sir, really. But back to the bill. The Students' Loan Scheme, Exemptions and Miscellaneous Provisions, Amendment Bill 2009 is definitely worthy of support. We will be supporting it because we are not about petty politics. We are about doing what is right for New Zealand, and we are happy as an opposition to see the government doing things that we agree with. We're not here just to oppose and carp and whine. We are here to do what's right for New Zealanders. The difference between the two sides of the House is that we are about the many, not the few. And too often we see members opposite doing what is in the interests of the few, not the many. The few, not the many. And today, sir, we stand behind this small piece of legislation that further strengthens and further broadens